Hey, English learners. Hopefully, some of you are able to watch this live. Thank you to whoever comes in in such short notice, with such short notice, because I didn't actually announce this or anything like that. But I wanted to go live because I hit 2 million subscribers. And so that's as good of an excuse as any to go live. And so I also wanted to try this out, just doing kind of like live streams where I'm just talking at normal speed. I'm not changing my voice or anything like that. I see someone's here in the chat. Thank you for coming in. So thank you all for coming in on such short notice. But yeah, I wanted to try doing some kind of live stream type videos where I just talk at normal speed to give you some advanced content to practice with. So it's like just a way for you to, come interact with me, but also practice your listening. I'm going to be talking at normal speed. And then you can write some comments here. So I'm starting to see some comments come in. I'm going to write a comment myself. Ask me your questions. So from time to time, I'll look at these questions, and if there's anything there that is worth answering, I'm sure all your questions are worth answering, but I might just like take a peek at these messages from time to time and just see if there's anything that I want to answer. But I thought today, since it's the 2 million subscriber live, maybe I'll talk a little bit about this channel, the history behind its channel, and then maybe I'll interrupt myself to answer some of your questions, or you can ask me questions, maybe related to English, my channel, whatever it may be. This is the first time I've ever done this, so forgive me if I'm a little bit of an amateur, but this is like the test run. So let me just quickly take a look at some of these messages. They're coming in now. Why'd I shave my beard? Well, the wife didn't really like the beard anymore, so I shaved it. So I kind of just go back and forth between having facial hair, not having facial hair. So I'm not doing that right now. So this is a live, in case any of you are watching this, the replay, like after this is already done. Of course, I'm looking at live comments right now that people are writing. I don't really know how all this works, but I know that there's such thing as like a super chat or something like that. So if any of you wants to do that, then of course I'll see it, and then hopefully I'll be able to read your comment or answer your question or whatever. So thank you all for coming in here. I hope that you can understand me. Let me know, write a message or a comment or whatever, the chat. I don't even know what this is called, but let me know if you can understand me when I just talk like this normally. Because normally most of my content, like I change my the way I speak, I slow down, I speak a little more clearly, and normally there are subtitles, there are captions below. This is like the first time I'm doing it like this, where there's just nothing, right? Or maybe it's the first time, I don't know. But okay, I see that someone can understand. I see another person could understand. That's cool. So I'm glad that this is like some of you are already at the level where you can understand me when I just talk like this. So let me talk a little bit about this channel and how it even came to be and how it got to this point. I think I started this back in, I think 2017, if I'm not mistaken, the end of 2017. At that point, I was just an English teacher teaching people online, and I wanted to make content. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that, but I wanted to make content just so that I could have more of an audience, more of a public, people I could potentially take over to. I don't know if I started a school or whatever I was going to do later on, right? I didn't know what I was going to do. But eventually, after making this content on the side and, just continuing to teach my classes, my philosophy changed a little bit of like what type of content I wanted to create. At the beginning, believe it or not, I was making content for only Spanish and Portuguese speakers. I don't know if any of you remember that. Probably not, because that was many years ago. I don't think I have many listeners nowadays that are still here after that many years. Probably not. But in the beginning, I made content in Spanish and in Portuguese. Right? Oh, one of you says that you remember. That's cool. So I made content in Spanish, in Portuguese. I made full-on videos in these languages. You might go and check back and try to find those. They're not there anymore. I actually put all those on private. So now the only videos on my channel are the ones of me speaking English. But at the beginning, I thought I wanted to just reach Spanish and Portuguese speakers, and I spoke Spanish and Portuguese. Spanish better than Portuguese, obviously, but I spoke both of those languages. So I tried to make videos in those languages, teaching English. But eventually, my philosophy switched. I started making videos in English, but the channel wasn't really taking off, right? I was gaining some subscribers and people were viewing my stuff, but it wasn't like a huge success or anything like that. And then I got this idea that I wanted to maybe start some type of program or school, and I needed to create content for that. And so I started creating a bunch of listening content. I started recording videos of myself speaking, and they're at different levels, A1, A2. You guys already know what I'm talking about, probably. That's probably how you even found this channel. And I was just making that content just to try to have content available for that eventual school program or website or whatever it was that I was going to have. But I needed a place to store everything. So I started uploading them to YouTube because I thought, it's good content. So I'll just upload them to YouTube as well. And so I did that. And after a couple months, I realized, oh, these videos are getting a lot of views, way more than my normal videos. And suddenly my channel started to grow. And I realized, oh, what people really want is these types of listening videos. And so I kind of switched my focus and just started making a bunch of content for listening. I made a lot of content for like A1 listening, B1 listening, A2 listening, things like that. And I realized that the titles of my videos were the exact phrases people were looking up on YouTube. They were looking up A1 English listening practice or whatever. And they found my videos there in the search. And so I thought, oh, this is great. So I started just focusing on this content. And I really liked that because this is content that I liked using as a language learner, because I'm also a language learner. I liked using content that is authentic, but maybe a little bit slowed down. Maybe it's a little bit clearer, but it's still like authentic content in a way. Like it's not just like opening up a textbook and just reading like textbook English and things like that, right? So that's what I mean by authentic content. So I started doing that and I just changed my whole focus to that. And then I thought, why not do a podcast where I do this exact thing and I'll just provide the transcript. And so I started that podcast in 2021, I believe. And I promoted it on my YouTube channel and it became a pretty popular podcast after about, I want to say, 7 or 8 months. It started to actually surpass the YouTube channel. And I think a big reason for that was that people really liked that I provided the transcripts for free. It takes a lot of work to do that, right? And I think most of the time when people provide transcripts for those types of like English podcasts or whatever, usually they're not for free. I think sometimes they are, but most of the time they aren't. Maybe you guys can tell me, I don't know. But I wanted to provide that for free because it's just a really good resource to have the transcript, have the episode, listen, read the transcript if you need it. So I started that. And then eventually the podcast became like the big thing. I know I have 2 million subscribers here on YouTube, but really my podcast is like the big thing, the big focus of my effort. Obviously, I like YouTube. It's great. But you all might notice by now that I'm not very good in terms of the technical stuff, especially when it comes to video. I'm here in my garage right now. This does not look like a great image, right? I'm just here in my garage, and I hope you guys don't mind. I hope that you're just here to practice your listening. You're here because you want to improve your listening comprehension, and that's great. So before I move on, let me just take a look at some of these comments right here. I see a lot of people coming in. Thank you all for coming in and commenting. And I see some like congratulations, thank you, hello, thank you. I see some different messages there. Yeah, thank you all. So I'm not very good. Bear with me as I learn how to kind of do this live stuff and look at the chat and all that. It's kind of hard to do this. But where was I? So the podcast became like the big thing. I continue to do YouTube videos. And I still make YouTube videos for different levels of listening nowadays. However, most of the traffic to my channel, most of the subscribers that come in are coming in because they're finding my like earliest videos. Some of you know what I'm talking about, like that original like A1 English listening practice video. I think the topic was language learning or something like that. It's the first one on the channel because I put all the other videos before that on private because I just kind of changed the philosophy of the channel at a certain point. But yeah, most of the people that come to my channel, they come because they find that video. So it's got like 10 million views or something like that. and then they just watch like the playlists of the videos. So I don't post that often nowadays, maybe once every couple weeks or something like that. But I still want to continue posting on YouTube. I just am not very good at this. I know it sounds funny because obviously I've got a lot of subscribers and everything like that, but it's just not natural for me. A lot of you can already tell this just by the way my content looks, and the technical stuff is not the best. Obviously, the quality is not the best in terms of audio and visual and all that. But hopefully, you enjoy the quality in terms of language learning resources, right? So basically, nowadays with my podcast, with my YouTube channel, my philosophy is I'm making content that I myself use as a language learner, right? So I use this type of content. And so I want to make this same content for other people. I use like podcasts, just audio content, and I also use video content as well. So I create them both. So I hope that you guys like this type of content. Let me look at the questions again. Let me see. Oh, someone asked, how did you come to the decision to work with English? Okay, interesting question. Well, my mom was an English teacher. She was an ESL teacher, English as a second language. She worked at community colleges, which is like the university level in the US. There's just different types of universities. So she was always really into English. And as a kid, my mom, she would like quiz me on grammar stuff. And most kids, they don't like this. It's like, Mom, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. For some reason, I kind of liked, these little quizzes she would give and the little nuggets of, English she would give me. And she would just explain different things about parts of speech in English and stuff like that. And I would always see her correcting essays because she would always correct people's essays, people from other countries that were writing essays in English. And so I had that in my mind. I liked English growing up. I secretly liked my English classes in high school. Most people hate them in the US. They hate reading literature and having to write essays. I actually kind of liked those classes. I had some really good teachers and I had good experiences there. And then I decided that after I dropped out of film school, some of you might already know that, I actually decided to do something related to English and writing because that's like one of the few skills I have. And so I was going to become a high school English teacher, but I ended up meeting my wife in Mexico. And after that, well, I knew I was going to marry her, not soon, but I knew eventually I wanted to marry her. And so basically, I had to find a career that would allow me to move to Mexico because that's where she lived. And so I thought, hey, instead of teaching at a school in the US, just like high school English, why don't I do what my mom did? And why don't I teach people that are learning English from around the world? But instead of doing that in the US, like my mom did, I can go and do that in another country. So that's how I came to move to, or actually work with English. But of course, I moved to Mexico after I got married to my wife. And I did like a program, a certification program to be able to teach in schools there. And I taught at a language school for like 2.5 months or something like that. And then I found online teaching and I was like, I actually like this better. And so I just left that physical job, started teaching online. And, at that point, I was already a language learner because I had learned Spanish by talking to my wife. So I was already in the language world. I started learning Portuguese because I had a bunch of Brazilian students, and Portuguese is very similar to Spanish. I got interested in French, so I started going to a French school while I was living in Mexico. And of course, the rest is history, right? Pretty much, I've already said what happened after that. I eventually started making content. And then eventually I shifted from teaching like those one-on-one classes to just doing content. Not just, because I still do a few one-on-one classes, mostly with listeners that want to take a class with me. I let them do that. But yeah, that's pretty much the story of how I started working with English. Let me see if there's any other like comment in here that just catches my attention. I'm looking. What time is it my country? It's 9:15 here a.m. So I'm in Southern California. That's where I'm from originally, and I live here now. I lived in Mexico for 6 years. So that was a big phase of my life, a big chapter of my life. But now me and my family, we're back here in the US. So happy to be here. Let's see what other people are saying right here. If you guys have a question, you can let me know. I'll probably stay on for another, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. It's been almost 15 minutes, but I just want to see what everyone else is writing here. Thank you for the a fan from China there. Thank you. People think I speak well. So that's something I wanted to talk about because I don't really have many skills as a person. I have a lot of interests, hobbies, things that fascinate me. But in terms of just hard skills, I don't really have many, unfortunately. But the one, it's not even a skill, it's just kind of like a God given thing that I have, is I have a very understandable way of speaking. Even before I was an English teacher, I was always like someone who spoke pretty clearly compared to other people. Even when I speak fast, it's still more understandable than other native speakers usually. And so, because I just have a voice that's pretty understandable and a speaking style, not just a voice, but a speaking style, because of that, that's kind of allowed me to stand out a little bit in the English world, the English education world. People find me easy to understand. You guys can let me know. Tell me in the comments, how easy do you think am I to understand compared to other native speakers that you hear? I don't know, on the streets, on TV, or whatever. Just let me know, because I get comments all the time of people who tell me that I'm the most understandable person they've ever heard, or they can only understand me and no one else, or whatever. And a lot of people, they just, they listen purely to my content because I'm understandable. So my voice is just playing in their ears for hours every day. It's kind of strange. Yeah, someone put very easy, very clear. Yeah. So it's kind of strange when you think about this. Put yourself in my shoes. Imagine that your voice is just playing in people's ears from all around the world for hours and hours. A lot of people, they message me and they say, I go to sleep to your content because I guess my voice, I have that kind of deep vocal fry voice, that kind of voice that some people don't like. I get it. Some of you have said you don't like that, but some people find it very like relaxing, calming. And so some people, they tell me that they just go to sleep to my content. Sometimes like they're not even trying to learn English. They just put their headphone in or whatever, and it helps them fall asleep at night. So it's kind of weird. I mean, it's cool, I guess, but it's a little strange to know that people are listening to you all over the place. That kind of reminds me, I don't know if any of you have wondered, like, if I get recognized by people. I'm not a celebrity, even though there's like 2 million subscribers here. My podcast is pretty large. It's not like I get noticed by people, especially because I live in the US. So it's not like my audience is all here around me. However, I do have like a few instances where I have been recognized in Mexico. They're pretty funny. It's not something that I go around expecting because I'm just a normal guy. I'm not like a celebrity or anything like that. But because a lot of people learn English, chances are if I spend enough time in a country outside the US, someone's going to recognize me because it's like, hey, I've come across your videos when I'm learning English or whatever. So I think that's happened like 5 times in total in Mexico. Actually, once here in the US as well. So it's happened like once here, maybe I want to say 4 or 5 times in Mexico. So it's kind of funny. And it's nice to meet people just out in public if they know who I am. I mean, it's not the type of person I am. I don't want to like be recognized, but when I do have like a nice encounter with someone, it's kind of cool, right? Let me see right here. Let me look at the comments again. So yeah, my voice is nice, right? And easy to understand. Speak clearly and slowly. So right now, I'm not trying to slow down or anything like this. So this is like how I might talk if I'm just with my friends. So if you can understand me right now, great job, because that means that you would understand me if we were just like having a coffee together at a cafe or something. So let that sink in. Let that encourage you a little bit. If you feel like, oh, wow, Connor's speaking at normal speed, there's no subtitles, but I'm understanding him pretty well. Maybe you can understand me 90% right now or 95% of what I'm saying. That's awesome because I'm literally not changing the way I'm speaking at all. Like, this is just how I would make a video if I were talking to a friend or whatever. This is how I would speak if I were talking to a friend. So that's cool. Someone asked if I have an Instagram or TikTok. Yes, I have both. It's funny, like I forgot that I had a TikTok. I just created it like a few years ago just to experiment with it. I was just clipping parts of like my podcast, and the captions were there. And I just wanted to see if I could grow on there. And it grew really fast. I think there's like hundreds of thousands of subscribers there. And some of the views got millions and millions of views, but wasn't really helping me. It wasn't like the audience that I was going for. And I was really trying to like get people from there to go to my podcast. And I didn't really see any significant difference, even though there were like millions of views on these videos. And so I just kind of quit after a couple months. Instagram, I do have, and I do still like answer messages there if people message me on Instagram. However, I haven't really posted anything. I'm bad. I don't even use social media really as just a user. It's not the type of person I am. I'm the type of guy that picks up a physical book and I read, for entertainment, or I go outside, or I'm doing other things. I don't really interact a whole lot with like social media and things like that in my free time. I do watch like videos and stuff like that if I need to like practice a certain language or something. Obviously, I do all that. But in terms of my own entertainment, I don't really use all these things like social media. I'm kind of like an old man when it comes to that. And so, because of that, I'm not really the type of person that wants to create a lot of content there either. I do the podcast. That's easier for me because there's not even video. I'm just here with my microphone in my garage. I do videos sometimes, but it's harder for me. There's more resistance there, right? To kind of do the setup and everything like that. This live is a lot easier. So if you guys like this, I might end up just doing more lives for different levels. Like I might do a live where I'm just like speaking slower. But of course, the subtitles won't be there because that's kind of something I do in post production. Like I record the video, then like I pay for this tool that like puts the subtitles there. So I wouldn't be able to do that with the live. But I don't know. I don't know how important that is for you guys to have those subtitles. Maybe I'll alternate back and forth. But what was the question? Where am I even going with this? Oh yeah, Instagram. So I was thinking I might do some Instagram lives again. I'd like to revive that account a little bit, but it's just hard for me to do those kinds of things because I'm just not a guy that likes social media and posting and all these kinds of things. I'm very resistant to all of that. So I will have to kind of consider whether that's really worth it. But you guys can let me know if you guys really like watching stuff and looking at stuff on Instagram. Maybe I'll start doing lives there, kind of like what I'm doing right now. So people can ask me questions and I can answer them. Let me see. Let me take a look at some other questions here. So someone's asking if they can move all the way up to C1 using my content. Well, your listening can probably improve a ton. I've talked to people, multiple people who take a class with me and they tell me, I've learned English purely by listening to your content for many, many hours, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, repeating and just using the transcript or not using it, whatever way they do it. And then they come to me, in a class, and then they can speak to me. They can actually have a full conversation with me. And it's the first time they've ever talked to anyone before. That's happened to me a lot of, like, it's happened multiple times. Okay. So I know that using this kind of method, this content, if you're doing it enough and you're using repetition and you're really doing it actively, this can really help take you to a level where you're actually just like able to start having conversations, even though you have no experience with that. Because I've seen that on multiple occasions with different people I've talked to. So that's something to think about. But remember, I don't have like a course program that's like taking you from one level to another. That's not really my philosophy in terms of language learning. And other people do that, and that's great. I'm not like trying to, talk negatively about that, but just me, in the philosophy I have as a language learner and what I try to, get across to other learners who are learning English is that this process that we're in, this is something that takes hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of hours to reach a high level in a language, right? So think of it this way. Think of the way like I learned Spanish, which is a very unorthodox way. I learned by talking to my wife, who was my girlfriend at that time, when we were in a long distance relationship for 3 years before we got married. So basically every day or almost every single day, I would talk to her on the phone. This is hours and hours and hours. So let's just pretend it was 1 hour a day for 3 years. That's already 1,000 hours. Okay. So just that alone is 1,000 hours. 1,000 hours is a long time, right? Because there's 365 days in a year. To reach 1,000 hours, that would be 3 hours a day. So if you can imagine doing 3 hours a day of English practice, really intense English practice. I wasn't just like watching a TV show in Spanish and kind of paying half attention or whatever. I was talking to a girl who I was dating. I was literally trying to learn Spanish in order to get to know her, to have a relationship with her, because I wanted to marry her. There's nothing that's more intense than that when it comes to language learning. Like my whole future depended on it. So I was extremely, extremely integrated and involved in this and active in this language learning process. Not like how I am now with languages. The languages I learn now, it can't even compare, right? Can't compare to dating someone who you intend to marry and move to their country. So I was as focused and as intense as you could possibly get in terms of my English practice. I was speaking to her and listening to her every single day. We were arguing in Spanish. I was learning how to express myself, my feelings in Spanish. I had to tell her every single thing I was doing that day because we would update ourselves, like each other, on what we were doing that day. I did all of that for, 1,000 hours or more. So if you translate that to just like practice that isn't that intense, right? Just like normal practice, let's say, you know, you would probably have to do double or triple that to even reach like the amount of dedication that I had in that 1 year. And so this is just giving you an idea of how long it takes to learn a language. It's thousands of hours if you want to reach like an actual high level where someone's like, whoa, like I'm not like, I don't speak as much Spanish nowadays because I speak English at home because my kids are here and I speak to them in English. But in the past, when I lived in Mexico before my kids were born, I spoke like 90, 95%, maybe even like close to 100% Spanish at home with my wife. And she spoke to me purely in Spanish. All of our friends are Spanish speakers. Our whole life was in Spanish. And, I'm not trying to like say that I, had a fantastic level or something like that. But there were occasions when someone would mistake me. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I was talking for a long time. If they would hear me speak for like 20 seconds, let's say, there were a few occasions where people thought I was a native speaker, not because I have a really, really good level. It was more because it was like 20 seconds or whatever. And I was speaking pretty well without like a thick accent or whatever. Where was I going with that? Yeah. So basically like, to reach that level, to like reach a level where someone is like, wow, this guy, this girl speaks super well. That's thousands of hours. Okay. So completing a course, like, all right, this course is going to take you from A1 to C1 or something like that. Unless that course is like, all right, this is a 5,000 hour course where you're spending a lot of time talking to a native speaker, you're doing this, you're doing that. Unless it's that, it's probably not taking you actually from an A1 to a C1 level. It's probably a good guide that helps you get there, but you're going to have to do a lot of practice on your own. And I'm sure when you buy these courses that tell you that, I'm sure in the course they'll tell you, oh yeah, you have to be doing this work on your own. And then it's obviously it's legitimate, right? To follow a course, but to do all this practice on your own. But the key is the practice on your own. Again, like just use me as an example. I just did tons and tons of hours of really intense practice. I was so engaged in it. It was like my whole life. Okay. So, and I'm still, someone who makes a ton of mistakes in Spanish, right? Even nowadays. I don't want to say a ton of mistakes, like every sentence has a mistake, but you get what I'm saying. I'm not a native speaker. So I just want to, kind of just help you have more realistic expectations and not think you just take a course and you get from A1 to C1, right? This is a long journey and you got to like the journey. Okay. If you're just like so anxious that you're not at this level yet and you're not really enjoying the process, it's going to be really stressful for you. Okay. Because this is a long, long process. All right. This is many, many hours. All right. So I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to help you understand that we're all in this same boat together as language learners, where it's just like, it just takes forever. And you reach a certain point where it's like you're not even feeling like you're improving anymore. Because once you've learned all the basic words and phrases, and you know them pretty well, then all the new phrases that you still don't know, you don't hear them that often because they're not that common. And so it takes so long to like learn those and have those down, get those down. So it's just a really long process. So, okay. Someone is talking about shadowing. I don't do shadowing. So I can't really talk about that. This is one of the things people love the most, and they even do it with my content. That might work. I don't know. I don't do it, and I don't try to give advice about things I don't do. So it's not something I'm going to talk about. Okay. Let me read a couple more comments. Maybe we'll wrap it up pretty soon. Okay. So someone asked, what do A1, A2, B1, and B2 mean? So this is like the framework that is used, particularly in Europe, to like analyze what level you're at. Are you at an A1 level, an A2 level? It's just basically like beginner, upper beginner, lower intermediate, upper intermediate, etc., right? I've talked many times before about how the content I make when I title it A1 is not actually A1 content in the literal sense. Like if I have a video titled A1, I'm going to be using words and phrases that are not technically at the A1 level. But that's on purpose because my philosophy is that you have to challenge yourself. If you're at an A1 level, you should not be listening to content that's exactly your level. You need to listen to higher level content. So the A1 practice videos are for people who are at an A1 level and want to improve. So they need to listen to content that will help them improve. So it's basically like if you're at an A1 level, you listen to my A1 content and it's higher than an A1 level. So it will help you reach the next level. That's my philosophy because, I said this recently. I think, me as a Greek learner, I have a fairly low level, but I listen to native content. Okay. I listen to literal native content in Greek with the subtitles. But I do it because that's helping me reach, the next level. And so this is something that I think you guys should adopt as well as a philosophy and, think of, okay, what content can I listen to that will challenge me to help me reach the next level? Okay. Let me just read a couple more of these and then I think I'm going to end pretty soon. Okay. Comprehensible input. What does that mean? That just means that comprehensible input. Comprehensible means you understand it. Comprehensible means understandable. Input means what comes in. So reading or listening. So typically when people talk about comprehensible input, they're talking about something you're listening to or possibly reading that is understandable to you, but it's a little bit above your level. This is kind of what I'm talking about. So it's not like you understand every single word on every single page or every single word the person is saying. It's a little bit above your level, but you understand enough where you can just get the whole context of everything. And your brain is kind of filling in the gaps and understanding those words that might not be familiar to you just because you understand the whole content. Okay. I'll read one or two more. I'll read two more, as I know that I've received a lot of comments here. Okay, I see one right here. Do I teach my kids Spanish? My wife speaks only Spanish at home. To me and to my kids, my wife never, ever, ever speaks English, ever. I can't emphasize that enough. There is no English spoken in my house. No, wow, I just forgot. There is one instance in which she does speak English, and that is when she does homeschool with my son. My son is he's like in his first year of like homeschool. It's not even official at this point, but she's going through like a homeschool book with him. She's teaching him how to read in English. So she actually does that in English because we're in the US, the curriculum's in English, and obviously we want him to develop these skills in English. That is the only time that English comes out of her mouth at home. Other than that, she speaks to my kids in Spanish. She speaks to me in Spanish. So my kids are learning Spanish because of her. And then I speak to them in English. And I have been speaking to her in English ever since my son was born. But I'm not really liking that anymore because now I live in the US. So I'm speaking English every day with different people, but I don't really have a lot of Spanish practice. I hear my wife speak only Spanish to me, but that's it. And so my Spanish has kind of gotten a little rusty. It's kind of gone down a little bit. So my Spanish was better a few years ago. So I kind of want to like reach that same level that I was at a few years ago. It shouldn't be that hard. I just have to speak more in Spanish at home. So I think I'm going to do that. But yeah, my kids are growing up bilingual, which is pretty cool. It's cool to see that process. I've talked about that in content before. It's really interesting. So if you guys have bilingual kids, you know what I'm talking about. It's like a fascinating thing to see them like have those two systems, juggle them in their brains and separate them because they separate them at a very young age. Like at 2 years old, they're already separating the systems in their brain. So it's pretty cool. I'll read one more. Let me see right here. I'm just going to kind of, all right, I'll just answer this one that's near the bottom. I'm sure most of you have this question. I receive this all the time. How do you improve your speaking skills? So when we speak, basically we're saying things that we know are correct, or we're like inventing sentences or phrases, putting puzzle pieces together that we think might be correct, or we don't know if they're correct, but we're just translating them from our language into the other language and hoping it's correct, right? So some of the things that you say, like when you say, hi, how are you? that's not translated from your language. That's just a phrase you know is correct in English, right? So there's no translation work there. You're just saying it, right? Because you've said it a million times in English, right? So that is a category of things that we know how to say. What we want to do is we want to enlarge that category, meaning we want to have these words and phrases that we say become natural so that we don't have to first think of them in our language and then translate them. Obviously, there will always be a little bit of that, even with some familiar phrases. But in general, if you can say a phrase and you know it's correct in English, like you're not even doubting it, it's because you've heard that phrase so many times or you've said it so many times, so you can just say it with confidence, right? So we want to enlarge that category and and make it so that we don't have to translate as many things. However, it's not bad to translate things from our native language to the language that we're learning, right? In your case, English. That's just part of how you learn to speak a language, okay? We all do that. So if some people like try to completely circumvent that and just completely avoid that step, I'm sure there are like some very interesting, in-depth, kind of revolutionary methods to do that. But most of us are not really going to do that. We're not going to pay tons of money to like have these special courses for that or go to these special schools where they do that. That's not most of us. Most of us are just going to try to, over time, translate a little bit less and say things a little bit more automatically because we know them. And the only way you can do that is if you are familiar with those phrases, right? So you're listening, you're reading, and then you're saying you're speaking, right? Or in some cases writing as well. The more you hear a phrase, the more it's ingrained in your brain and the more easily you can just reproduce it. So I'll just go back to those people that I talked about before who take a class with me and it's their first time ever speaking English to another person, but they've used my content for hundreds and hundreds of hours or whatever. So they're saying phrases that they know are correct, even though they've never said them before, because they've heard me say them, because I repeat myself many times in my podcast, right? So they've heard those phrases again and again and again. And so they just say what I say, right? They just repeat what I said right there. Even though they've never said it in their life, they know it's correct, right? So it's not that they had to go through this training of like how to correctly put the puzzle pieces together. Yes, grammar is kind of just like putting puzzle pieces together. But when someone speaks fluently, they're not doing that in real time. It's not like, all right, subject, all right, verb, complement. That's not how it goes, right? They're just saying phrases, maybe kind of different versions of phrases with the same structure just because they know they're correct, right? So the way we know something is correct is by listening and hearing that phrase many, many times. So many, many hours, hundreds, thousands of hours of listening. That's going to be a huge, huge benefit to you to help you just say things automatically. And then there is, however, another part of this equation of speaking better, because I'm not just saying, okay, just listen and that's going to make you speak better. It's going to give you a really good foundation. But once you're there, once you're ready to like actually just go full head on into the speaking practice, then you actually do have to get a lot of frequency, like frequent practice, okay? Because there are like what I would call speaking muscles that you really have to develop. You have to like, to establish and improve these abilities, okay? And so when you start speaking regularly, having regular practice, saying the same things over and over again, it's that same effect where like once you've received feedback from the person you're speaking to, so you know, okay, this is correct or this isn't correct, and then you say the correct thing the next time and then the next time, it becomes part of that category of phrases that are just automatic that you know, okay? So when I started speaking French regularly, before that, like I had already established a really good foundation because I'd done tons of hours of listening, but I hadn't really developed that speaking part, those speaking muscles yet. So I wasn't very good at speaking, but there were a lot of phrases that were just coming out automatically, and my tutors were pretty impressed. However, over like the course of the next year and a half of speaking regularly in French, my speaking improved a ton, right? And it's not because I learned a bunch of phrases that were completely new to me. Basically, it was just helping me draw out phrases that I'd already heard before. And I would say them and then maybe get feedback. And then I would say them again, the correct version or whatever. And then after doing this a few times, those phrases start to migrate to the category of, okay, I know this is correct. I've said this many times, right? And so, like, little by little, those phrases are going to this other category of things that you just say because you know they're correct, right? So that's basically how this process works, in my opinion. Other people might have different experiences, but that's basically how it worked. That's how it worked for me, even when I learned Spanish in a very unorthodox way. There were just things I would hear my wife say over and over again, and those started just come out of my mouth. Maybe the first time it felt weird, but then I said it again, and then it just became part of that automatic category, right? So that's basically how it should work for you, right? You're gonna, translate a lot of things, but hopefully, as you do more listening, as you do more speaking, there's just a lot of things that you just automatically say because eventually those move to that category of things that you just say because you've said them a million times, you've heard them a million times, right? And then you kind of just learn grammar intuitively like that because you learn how to say the phrase, if I were you, I wouldn't do that. And then kind of intuitively, you just start to, form other sentences with that same structure. Instead of if I were you, if I were him, I wouldn't do that. If I were her, I wouldn't do that because you kind of already have that structure in your mind and you're just like substituting words. So, little by little, the grammar becomes intuitive, these phrases become automatic. So, that's basically how, in my opinion, someone gets good at speaking. Some of you might disagree. Some other English teachers might disagree. Some other polyglots might have other ideas, but that's kind of how I've seen it for me. So, I think I'm going to stop right there. I've rambled on and on for like 40 minutes or so. I hope that this was good practice for your listening to hear me speak at normal speed. Yeah, before I go, can you write a comment? Tell me, what do you think about this type of video? Like, what do you think about me going on live, speaking at normal speed, not slowing down, and not even putting the subtitles? Like, do you guys like this type of practice? I don't know if a lot of you have this level yet where you can just understand me pretty well, where you can understand most of what I'm saying. If a lot of you like this, then I might do more content like this where I'm just speaking at normal speed, no subtitles, going live. It's pretty easy for me to do this, just go live. It's a lot easier than setting everything up or whatever and editing everything. So if this serves as good practice for you for like advanced type listening practice, listening to a native speaker, then I might do this more. I might alternate between like doing the more structured videos with the subtitles or whatever, and then doing live videos like this. And then who knows, maybe I'll do lives where I speak slower, I speak faster. I'm just experimenting here. So I see that people are already saying, yeah, you like it. So that's good. Yeah, this live should be available on the channel after it ends. I'm new to this, so I'm hoping I have all the settings right, but I think it'll save afterwards. So you don't have to watch these live. It'll become just a normal video afterwards. And so you just watch it like any other video. But I think it might be posted in the live category. I don't know how it works, but I think if you just look at my normal videos, it might not include my lives. Maybe it will. I don't know. But I think you have to click on the live button and then you'll see my live stream. So we'll see how it works. This is kind of the test run, but a lot of people like this. So I might do this in the future. And then if any of you are listening to this after it's already been recorded, please write a comment and tell me, like, do you like this type of content? Would you like this type of content for lower levels, like A1, A2, or whatever? Or do you like it that it's like this, like normal speed? This is like advanced practice. Because if so, I might alternate where I do like the lower level videos in a more structured way with subtitles. And then these videos right here, no subtitles, full on native speech. So you're getting like just native practice. And I'll interact with you a little bit, read your questions, might answer some of them. So that's kind of my idea. And I might do that on Instagram as well. But be patient with me. I'm just kind of like thinking of this right now. I don't know if I'll do any of this that soon, but I'd like to hear your feedback and your comments about that. So all this was for the occasion of the 2 million subscriber milestone that I hit. Thank you all for helping me reach that. It's pretty cool to know that the channel's reached that many people. And of course, if you only watch me on YouTube and you haven't checked out my podcast yet, please go to the podcast. It's different content. I don't post the same content. It's completely different on my podcast and my YouTube channel, except for those older videos where I was just like reposting like podcast episodes. I'm not talking about that, but like pretty much most of the new content is completely different in those two areas. So down below in the description, you'll see the link to my podcast on Spotify. You can also find it really easily on any other podcast app. It's called Listening Time, right? So I think I'll end it there. Thank you all so much for helping me reach 2 million subscribers. Please share this channel with anyone you think might find it useful, and let me know what you think about the ideas that I mentioned about these lives and stuff like that, write a comment down below. I'd like to hear that. All right. Thank you all. And I wish you the best with your English learning.